Hi guys, my name is Rachel White. I am a JFK assassination researcher, and this video I'm going to talk a little bit more about Wesley Frazier, Linnie Mae Randall, the curtain rod package, and I'm going to follow on from some of the things that we talked about in my earlier video, that it was a remake of a video that I did a while ago, just to kind of bring us all up to speed and to come and have a look at some of these points again. So we talked about Wesley Frazier telling the story and being the only one, along with Linnie Mae, as to how Oswald woke up on the Friday morning, went into the garage at Ruth Payne's, picked up a brown paper package that he believes had curtain rods in, took it down 2 or 3 houses down the road to Wesley's house, and loaded that package on the backseat of Wesley's car, 1954 black Chevy, and they rode into the Texas School Book Depository together. Okay, so that's really kind of what we've been told, and we talked about that, and we, through our process of elimination and talking it through, have come to a place where we know now that that is a fabricated account, purely and simply coming from Wesley Frazier. And we are saying as well that because we've got these lies, and Ruth has lied and Wesley has lied, that these lies corroborate each other, that we are dealing with an intel team here in Irving, which sought to funnel Lee Harvey Oswald into being set up for the murder of President Kennedy. So that's really where we're coming from on this, and I just want to talk a little bit more about Frazier and his activities on the day of the assassination, and Linnie Mae Randall. So we know that Frazier has told us that he can prove who was in the doorway of the Texas School Book Depository at 12:30. However, we have no photographic record of Frazier being in that doorway during the assassination, like he suggests that he is. There are a number of video, film and photographs of that doorway, and we've clearly been able to identify now that Lee Harvey Oswald was in that doorway in his tan brown overshirt, and Lovelady was also in the doorway, but the other side of the doorway, and these two individuals are clearly now identifiable, and we worked out through our 77 points of reference which one of these men is which, and we know now that the figure standing to the, as he would be looking at it, to the right hand side of the doorway and looking out along Elm in a brown tan overshirt is Lee Harvey Oswald, and Lovelady is standing the other side. However, even though Frazier tells us he was there at that moment, we have never been able to identify Frazier in the shadows of any film footage, anything, any photographic record of Frazier in the plaza on that day. It simply appears at this present time to not be there. Now, there's a very, very good reason for that, I personally believe. And we need to think about Frazier's role a little more, because if Frazier, as we're seeming to suggest now, is involved with the setup with Lee Harvey Oswald and knows ahead of time to produce a story about a curtain rod package to explain how the weapon got into the school book depository and how Lee brought it in, and that's all been kind of, he knows the story, he knows the kind of angle to push forward about this weapon. We have to conclude from that Frazier knows more information than he's really supposed to, and if he knows more information than he's really supposed to, then he must be involved at a deeper intelligence level than we've realised. Now, we've done some research into Lee bringing a package into the building wrapped in a brown paper packaging on the Wednesday the 20th. Now, what happened here was that Lee was in Oak Cliff, and he had already been to Dobbs Pancake House on a Wednesday morning. And I feel that he, at some stage, has collected a weapon, and he has received that weapon most likely from the safe house there in Dallas. I just get a sense that that's the route that it would have come into him. And then he hitches a ride with a refrigerator salesman called Ralph Yates. And he asks Yates to take him downtown and drops him at the corner of Elm and Houston, and then proceeds to go into the building. But during the journey, Oswald is having a strange conversation, having identified this package as the curtain rods, about, you know, how easy it would be for somebody to take a weapon into the building and become a sniper and pick off the president as he comes back by in 2 days' time. Now, this is a very, very strange conversation to be having, and reading between the lines here, I'm just sensing that as we know, Lee Harvey Oswald was wanting to stop the assassination. It's my belief that he did all of the things that he did with a hitchhiker and had that conversation quite deliberately, so that any reasonable person then would think that there was a serious threat now to President Kennedy and would do something about that. Because let's face it, if you're on the receiving end of some kind of dodgy information, you'd be very worried about that as an ordinary person, and the likelihood is that you would want to ring up the police, or you'd want to go and speak to somebody that you've heard some kind of rumor of a threat, or you felt uncomfortable. This guy's got in my car. He's making comments which I don't like the sound of this. So you see, Oswald is absolutely counting on Ralph to call this in, because if Ralph was to call this in on the Wednesday evening or even on Thursday, what's going to happen? The police are going to swoop into the TSBD. They're going to see that is actually a rifle, because Oswald has brought one in and you know, hidden it, stuffed it behind the doorway somewhere in the stairwell. We don't really know exactly where he put it. They find a rifle in the building, and so then the threat level is escalated. This is serious, because we found a rifle, and in that way, you see, the assassination would have got stopped ahead of time. So although it looks strange, because in hindsight it looks like Oswald is trying to set himself up, he's actually not. He's trying to prevent the assassination from happening. But Oswald's plan goes wrong, because Yates does not call this in. He stays quiet. We don't know why he wouldn't think about this. Maybe we just don't know. Lee wasn't convincing enough, or he didn't pick up on the threat level. We don't know what was going through Ralph's head at all. But of course, after the assassination has happened, he comes forward then with what he knows. What does he know? He knows that he's had this crazy encounter with the alleged assassin, and you know, they've had this curtain rod discussion 2 days prior to the assassination. Now, Ralph is carted off to the funny farm. He is institutionalized, deemed to have mental health problems, and they institutionalize him because they don't want him talking. And the reason that, of course, that they don't want him talking and talking to the press or making comments in any regard is because he has come along and told of this curtain rod narrative, this story, 2 days ahead of Frazier's curtain rod story. So in this way, we have to conclude that the curtain rod story is part of the set narrative. Lee uses it for his own purposes, and Frazier is catching up, because this is the plan of how it's going to be told. This is how the weapon got into the building. Now, I do believe that Lee was tasked with taking that weapon into the building on the Wednesday morning. The conspirators had asked him to do that. So he was following on. Remember, he was part of a conspirator team. He had to do the tasks he was set. And if he had got found out that he was trying to stop the assassination ahead of time, he risked death. We talked about that before. So he's doing what he's following the plan. He's doing what he's been required to do. He's taking that weapon into the building, and he is clearly wanting it to be known. Now, let's just think about, if you are going to organise a setup and a plan and a narrative and a story, you have to ensure as a conspirator that this story is going to stay on track. You have to know that all the little tasks are being done on time to fit into the narrative so that you can run with the story at the end of the line when you need it to kick in. So it is my strong belief that because Frazier was working in the school book depository, Frazier is actually tasked with viewing Lee coming into the building with a brown paper package, which is purported to be curtain rods. But he does not see him. He doesn't see him because I feel that Lee was tasked to do this on the Thursday, but does it a day early. Frazier does not witness Lee coming into the building with that package, so he cannot confirm to further up the chain that the weapon is in the building and Lee was the one who brought it in. So what he has to do is he has to make up a story to cover his own backside, and that is exactly what I feel has happened in this situation. How would Frazier come up with a story about curtain rods out of thin air and have it match another scenario that's happened 2 days earlier without being in the know? It's just not possible. And how would we make the connection between the brown paper packaging when, you know, Yates was saying that the curtain rod package came in and Lee was carrying a brown paper package of curtain rods? How would we fit that? How would we fit that together so precisely if we weren't in the knowledge of it? And of course, in my previous video, we talked about how that paper package was apparently stowed inside a baby's blanket. And so how would you take, you know, why would you take it out of there to wrap it in brown paper, to take it down the road and all of those things? So we've got too much corroboration of the wrong thing, but in doing so, we can start to pick it apart and understand that a story has been created around these curtain rods package, this brown paper package, to make it fit what the narrative is going to be or being required to be. So this is telling us that Frazier is in the knowledge, in the receipt of the knowledge, involved deeply in the setup of Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, Linnie May, bless her heart, bless her heart. Linnie May has presented us with a few little issues that I'm afraid I can see straight through. And the first thing I'm going to point out about Linnie May is that Ruth Payne's house and Linnie May's house are on the same side of the street. So Linnie May's testimony is that she looked out of her kitchen window and saw Lee come to the carport, open Frazier's car and put the package on the back seat. Now, if you're looking out of your kitchen window and your window is facing street side, let's just think about this. Your window is facing onto the street, the same street now that Lee is coming in from, okay? And the car is parked to the side of the house, so it's at a right angle, okay? How are you going to see anybody come to the house and put open the door of a car and put a package in the car when your viewpoint is just forwards? Lee would have had no reason to cross over the road and come towards her. So how is she seeing this? This is the question. How is she seeing this? Now, some people have said that there was a garage, a kind of a port garage next to the house, and she opened the back door and saw that. I'm not buying that. And the reason that I'm not buying that is because Wesley, in his testimony, he did a kind of like a TV interview, and I viewed that, and I feel that he did not park his car in that carport that was adjoining to the house, for a start. So there's another space. So we have the carport, then there's a brick wall, and then there's another space where Wesley, I believe, parked his car. Now, let's just think about this logically. Wesley is staying in the with Linnie Mae, his sister, and she has a car, or her husband has a car of their own. So if you're the homeowner, you are going to get first dibs on the carport space next to the house. Anybody else that's a guest is going to park their car on the road, in the space next to anywhere else, because you're not the homeowner. So there's a brick wall. There's the carport and there's a brick wall. How in the world could Linnie Mae have looked out of any window and seen Oswald come to Wesley's car and put a package in there? It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. Furthermore, Wesley lets himself down on this because he actually used the phrase in that TV interview. Lee and I came out of the house together and we walked to the car. Right? Now, if that car is literally outside the kitchen garage and you open it and get into the car there, you would say, your language would be, Lee and I got in the car and we drove off. But the fact that Frazier actually uses the phrase, Lee and I walked to the car, means that there was some distance involved. Okay? So that shows to me that Frazier was in the habit of putting his car the other side of the wall. So there is absolutely now no way Linnie Mae or the grandmother could have seen Lee approach and put anything in the back of that car. So we know before, we've proved before the other way round from Ruth Payne's garage evidence that we've put together that this cannot possibly be the truth. But now we can see it from the Randall household that it also cannot be the truth. Linnie Mae did not see Lee Harvey Oswald on the Friday morning because he did not take a ride in with Frazier. And that is the truth, period. It did not happen. It is a made-up event, and it was made up simply to cover Frazier's backside, because if it hadn't have happened that way, he would have been in trouble somehow. Okay, so let's just think about the assassination and how this has come together, and now the assassination's happened and Frazier has left the school book depository building. A few people didn't come back into the building. A few people kind of escaped. It wasn't just Lee Harvey Oswald. And in actual fact, there was Frazier tries to tell us that there was some kind of roll call, but there's no evidential list of a roll call. We have a list of employees, but that's not the same thing as saying a roll call. Okay, so we know for sure that Frazier left the building. He absolutely did, because later on in the afternoon he turns up at Baylor Hospital. Now I want to talk about that in a little minute. Okay, so Frazier is clearly involved here. He's tasked with, we believe, switching the power off to the building. He walks out of the front entrance, thus knowing who is stood in that doorway, but he keeps on going. Now, I personally feel that Frazier was the one who boarded the bus mid-stop. You know that some people feel that there is an account. Well, we know that there's two accounts of how Lee left the plaza, but of course only one of those has to be true. And we know that Lee was who left the plaza in the Nash Rambler. That means that somebody boarded that bus. Somebody had to have done it. And I personally feel that this is Frazier who has boarded that bus. Cecil McWatters gave a testimony to say the young man that boarded the bus he boarded the banged on the doors because the bus had come to a log jam and all the chaos of the traffic. Boarded the bus mid-stop. Okay, and the young man that boarded his bus was wearing a blue overshirt, and we know that Frazier was wearing a denim style navy overshirt on that day. And the reason that we know that is because we've got some pictures of Frazier as he's been taken to the police city hall later in the day, and he has on a big jacket. It's like a denim overshirt, and from behind we can see the word Texas in big letters and an eagle. Now we've come to research that out, and that jacket is to do with Young Farmers for America, Young Farmers Federation, and their emblem is a big eagle, and then the state is emblazoned on the back of this outerwear. That to this day is produced in navy blue. So that's absolutely, we've proved that absolutely that Frazier was wearing a denim blue style overshirt on that day. And Cecil McWatters tells us that the young man boarding the bus was wearing a blue overshirt. Now, it's very possible that he did not see this big emblazoned thing on the back because he's only looking at the front half of Frazier. So he may well have missed that. Now, we've got to remember that this bus ticket turns up a bit later, but it doesn't turn up at 2:30 when Lee is first taken into custody. It turns up hours later, and it looks pristine. It doesn't look like it's been in the pocket of a man who's been roughed up, beaten up, shirt torn, hauled around, and it just doesn't look that way. It looks like, when we look at it online, it looks like presented evidence. And of course, if you are going to get a bus ticket is of no consequence usually. Once a bus ticket is done and you get off the bus, you chuck it away, wouldn't you? So I feel that this bus ticket was preserved as evidence to try and say that this has happened and he's boarded the bus, and we've got the story all mixed up, and I believe it was Frazier that caught that bus. Now, Frazier was brought in for questioning, and the reason that Frazier was brought in for questioning after 4 p.m. was because when the police went to Ruth Payne's house, Linnie Mae Randall drove up in her husband's car down the street, saw the commotion, and offered this curtain rod story. So, of course, the police there are going to say, well, where is your brother? We naturally want to talk to him because he's the one who's seen Lee this morning. So, now, this is what Linnie really does now, trip herself up. And this is what tells us that these people are completely complicit and involved here big time. Because Linnie Mae Randall tells the police that her brother has gone to visit their sick stepfather and he's in the hospital. But she tells them that he is at Parkland. Okay? Now, first of all, how in the world does Linnie Mae know where Frazier has gone? Because if the assassination is a random event, nobody had any foreknowledge whatsoever, you've left the building and you've gone to do what you would go on a whim. You wouldn't necessarily know what anybody would do next. How would she know where Frazier has gone? The only way she would know is if he had phoned her from the hospital to say, I'm at the hospital visiting our sick stepfather. But the problem is that the sick stepfather is not at Parkland. He's at Baylor. So how did Linnie make that huge mistake? How? It's her sick stepfather. Surely you know where your sick stepfather is. You don't get confused because you've been to see him last night, the night before. How would you make that kind of mistake? It's just ridiculous that you would even consider that would be. It just doesn't fit, does it? You just wouldn't make that kind of mistake. So this is what we're saying here, is that Frazier went to Baylor Hospital for other purposes. The man is indeed at Baylor, okay? But he didn't go there to see his sick stepfather. He went there for other reasons. And one of the reasons that he went there was to meet up with John Roselli, I believe, okay? Because we have independent witness who's Rod McKenzie, who's the manager of the safe house, the Dallas safe house, telling us that Roselli and himself met at Baylor around the time of the assassination that afternoon. Furthermore, we have an account from Ruth Payne that she went to the dentist on Friday morning before the assassination, and Ruth Payne's dentist almost certainly was at Baylor or on the campus there. So we're beginning to see now that Ruth Payne, John Roselli and Frazier are all in this place and all have reason or story about being at Baylor all at the same time. How is that coincidental without connection? It simply isn't. There has to be a deeper, darker connection. And it's all of these things are pointing to the fact that we've got a intel team coming straight out of Irving. Okay, so I've done another video about Linnie May, because actually Linnie May was tasked with some other things to do with covering the tracks here. So I'm going to put that up a bit later as well, so you can backtrack and see what we've talked about with Linnie May. But I want to say that Frazier and Linnie May and Ruth Payne have lied. They have deliberately done so, and they have done so in a way in which makes it look like that Lee was the assassin. And we've unpacked this, and it's like a house of cards. We can see it crumbling because we can unpack it and we can say, well, this isn't true and this isn't true and this isn't true. It doesn't fit together, and what does fit together corroborates lies. So we have to conclude then that these people, these individuals, are involved. They are involved. They had foreknowledge, and they are funneling Lee Harvey Oswald into a place where more still the blame can be put on him for the murder of President Kennedy. And that is an absolute travesty, because these people are still honoured. They are still being listened to, and they are still out there touting this story. And I just want us to think it through, because these stories no longer hold weight. Okay, so that's what I wanted to bring, and it's really great to chat to you. And we remember JFK, and we remember Lee Oswald, and on this 56th anniversary. Okay, well, bye for now.